What's up everybody, this is Nick at Stridewise.com where we look at boots and casual menswear, and today with a review of a hard to pin down boot from a hard to pin down boot brand from the Pacific Northwest that I've actually never covered before, this brand. And it's in a leather from an animal I've never worn before either. So we've got a lot of firsts here. This is just called the Chelsea and it's one of the newer models from Drew's Boots. I've been wearing these boots on and off for almost 6 months, including a trip to rural Oklahoma where I went investigating feral hog damage. And there are many ways this boot defies categories and stereotypes. So I'm gonna talk about the context of this boot, like why it's different to the other brands and the other boots from its region. And I'm also gonna tell you how to avoid the fit and sizing problems that I had, hopefully, and I'll tell you if I think it's worth it or not. So a while ago, I did what I think was a very good video with 2 other boot collectors where we went through 8 different brands that make Pacific Northwest boots. It's the category we're going to explain here today. There are many kinds of boots in the world, and the Pacific Northwest of the United States has its own particular history and climate and its own genre of boots. And while boot makers up there tend to sell a few kinds of boots, if you were to describe the typical or stereotypical, archetypal, I don't know which one to use, the stereotypical Pacific Northwest boot, you would say it'd be a boot designed for working outdoors in the cold and the wet. It's likely to have an unusually tall shaft and an unusually high heel. It'll be a boot made with unusually thick leather, both on top and beneath the foot, like midsoles. It'll be made with stitch down construction, usually, instead of the more common and easier to resole Goodyear welt. And it would be a boot made in the Pacific Northwest. The best known brands are in Spokane, Washington, but there are others dotted around the region. Drew's Chelsea is a Pacific Northwest boot that doesn't meet any of those criteria. And yet I can understand why someone would consider this a Pacific Northwest take on a Chelsea boot. Because unlike mock-toe boots and logger boots and cap-toe lace-up boots, the Chelsea boot didn't originate as an outdoorsy boot for work. It's a uniquely European design that was originally made as a walking shoe for Queen Victoria. It's a lot less cool than logging boots history, isn't it? But I have no patience for guys who argue that boots are just for work. But even if you were to argue that like a mock-toe boot should be tough and outdoorsy because that's what it was originally designed for, you can't get away with that line of reasoning for the Chelsea boot. Its original purpose was more like that of a shoe, something long-lasting and good-looking that's easy to put on when you go outside and don't want to step on glass, footwear. And while today there are now plenty of Chelseas designed for work, they usually aren't the resolable heritage kind of work boot. And they also usually aren't this casual. And it's actually always been a bit unusual to find any kind of Chelsea boot in the Pacific Northwest at all. So Drew's Chelsea is unusual in a ton of ways because this extra casual look is relatively rare for a resolable Chelsea boot. But it's also unusual in that when someone does try to make a Pacific Northwest Chelsea, like these ones from Nick's Boots and White's Boots, especially Nick's Boots, it's made with thicker work boot leathers and multiple pieces of protective leather in the upper and with stitch down construction, all elements that are typical of the P&W boot. So this is weird for a Chelsea boot and it's weird for a Pacific Northwest boot. It's both kinds of weird. And also, of course, it's not made in the Pacific Northwest. Drew's is interesting because there are a lot of brands up there who are in various arms races to produce the best possible quality and value in the region. But Drew seems to have decided that their best shot at surviving such intense competition is to diversify. So Drew's does indeed, I should make that clear earlier, Drew's does indeed make Pacific Northwest boots in the Pacific Northwest, like other models of theirs. Like this boot of theirs meets every single one of those criteria I mentioned earlier of the classic P&W style boot. But to stay competitive, they also sell some boots that are made in Mexico. Some of them include other models that are unusual to see from Pacific Northwest brands, like these cowboy boots are also from Drew's and they're made in Mexico. And there's also these Chelsea boots. They're made in Mexico and they are priced like it. They cost under $300, and even though it's made in Mexico, I think that is a pretty good price given the materials and how unique it is to the market. Like when it comes to Chelseas, it's true that Blundstone and Redback have casual Chelseas that are very popular, but they're not resolable. Once you're in the resolable boots territory, Chelseas are almost always smart casual, like almond-shaped toes and more built to look good, be comfortable and long-lasting than to like withstand brutal working conditions. So Drew's Chelsea is pretty darn casual for a resolable Chelsea. The toe is very round, the sole is a tough and grippy Vibram mini lug, And there is no dressing up this leather. A lot of great leathers out there become more dynamic and interesting as you wear them. What's nice is that this leather is dynamic and interesting from day one. This here is bison leather. Many people use that word synonymously with buffalo leather, but a lot of the time a buffalo leather boot or jacket like this one I have from Shut NYC, a lot of the times when it's called buffalo, it's made with Asian water buffalo and not American bison. And they're actually quite different as far as grain structure and stuff goes. And also Asian water buffalo is cheaper. But this boot is indeed the original American leather. This is US bison, tanned in Mexico. You probably think a bison could beat a cow in a fight and that therefore this leather is tougher than cow leather. I'd love to tell you as much, but the truth is that when it comes to tensile strength or how it performs in certain conditions, the way the leather is tanned and produced and split is usually much more relevant than what animal it comes from. So no one should say this bison leather Chelsea is so much tougher and manlier than like a wussy moo cow leather Chelsea. But what I will say is it's pretty cool. It has a cooler story, it's harder to find, and it looks cool as hell, especially because this isn't just bison leather, this is shrunken bison. Drew's does sell some bison leathers that are not shrunken, but shrunken is actually a pretty common way of making bison. If the chemistry is similar to shrunken calf skin, which I learned about here in this old video at Galloon Leathers in Tennessee, it's made by, quote, shucking it in the pickle and using glutaraldehyde to make a pucker in the leather. But tanning chemistry jargon aside, when you make a shrunken leather, it actually does sort of condense it. Like the leather gets a bit thicker and it does indeed look like you've zoomed in on the grain. Anyway, bison doesn't have to look like this, but it is pretty common to see shrunken bison out there. Probably because it makes it look even more rugged and bison-y, you know? I think people usually just like it when bison doesn't look like any old cow leather, you know? They've called this particular shrunken bison leather Jurassic, and they've sold these boots in a few colors of it, and they told me that they're planning to use it on other boots in the future as well. One reason I've been enjoying this leather more than I thought I would is that this Jurassic black one is both black and tan. I think the tan is like the undyed leather. So you can see that the non-black bits are kind of the same color as the sides of the leather midsole there. I normally don't love mixing like cooler black gray sorts of colors with warmer earthy tan brown green sorts of colors, but I actually really like the look of these boots, and they kind of work with any color I've worn them with. So they've been my default boot for a while now, at least for casual wear, which was a nice surprise. Like I could wear it with black jeans and brown pants. But we got to talk about the sizing, which is whack. I don't understand the sizing for these boots. For guys who don't know, your true size is the size you get on the foot measuring device you get at the shoe store called a Brannock device. Sneakers are often a half size up from your true size, that Brannock device size. Boots are usually a half size down from your true size. So Drew's Chelsea here is unusual because they suggest that you get your true size instead of your normal boot size. And it was still too small. So my true size is 11.5. Most sneakers of mine are 12, or about half my sneakers are 12. And most of my boots are 11. I got 11.5 for these, which is what they recommend. It was too small. I came back from Oklahoma and I said, these are too small. I'm not wearing them anymore. And they said, all right, we'll send you a size 12. My usual boot size, again, is an 11. And the 12 is still too tight, man. And I'm not the only guy who feels this way. Weston at Rose Anvil said the same thing when he tried them on. And also another boot reviewer I'm friendly with who I didn't ask if I was allowed to quote him by name, but he also told me he thinks that the fit is weird on these. So I kind of think you should go up a whole size. I would have been happy with a 12.5, to be honest. Now, Chelsea boots are harder to size than other boots because you can't adjust the fit. There are no laces, and they're especially hard to size if you have skinny ankles or a low instep, and I'm fortunate enough to have both. I'm aware that my ankle looks like it's swimming in the shaft of this boot here, and that is the fault of my ankles and not the boots. But the issue with these boots isn't the heel or the instep. Like in this instance, it's not the shape of my foot that's the problem. Like it's too snug at the ball of the foot, which is what Weston said in his video. There is good news though. Drew's Chelsea comes with these thick leather-topped foam insoles that you can remove if you want to. And that effectively lets you size up because now there's more volume in the boots. So if your boot comes with a removable insole, you are able to increase the size. And if it doesn't, you're able to decrease the size by adding an insole. So once I took these insoles out, it was a lot more comfortable here at the ball of the foot. It was more wearable, but now my toes are hitting the end of it when I walk around. So I don't know, man, at least go up half a size from your true size for these. Oh, and also it's worth noting that the insole is leather-topped foam. And so if the thought of taking out the insole makes you sad because then you would lose that shock absorption, the lasting board underneath the insole here is also foam. So even if you take out the insole, you're still getting that kind of high-tech shock absorption foamy feeling that was once just reserved for sneakers. Of course, some guys really don't like that in their boots. They prefer to be standing on all hard leather, especially Pacific Northwest boot guys. And you cannot take out the the lasting board here. So it's a foamier boot than you might be used to from brands that are headquartered in this region. One more note on sizing, because I just want to say what I say in all the sizing sections for videos about Chelseas and loafers, like laceless footwear, which is that you have two options for adjusting the fit. One is to add an insole or to take out the insole if it comes with one, and the other one is to get a tongue pad from this company called Pedag. Costs 10 bucks, maybe 15 bucks. If you stick one of those under the instep here, there's a very good chance that your heel slip issues will suddenly be fixed. Do not listen to people who tell you to buy like some extra rough suede or something to add to your heel, and don't use toe fillers. What actually is often the culprit, always the culprit for me, when I'm getting a lot of heel slip in a Chelsea boot or a loafer is the extra volume in the instep. It's like magic. All right, so is this boot worth it? I think it is. It's less than 300 bucks. It's got this cool ass Bison leather. It's also hole cut, which I haven't mentioned actually. You notice how there's no seam under the elastic here, which you pretty much always get with Chelsea boots. This is one piece of leather going all the way around and then sewn at the back there. That's very rare, and it makes it significantly more expensive to make. And it's usually something people only care about on dressy Chelseas because it's mostly an aesthetic benefit. So it's cool to see that on a more casual round toe Chelsea. That's like another way that this boot's pattern and leather is unusual. And it helps to like spotlight the leather as well. Like it's just the leather you're looking at. And there are a few other touches here that you can't see that make this boot more expensive to produce. Most boots use a steel shank and synthetic Celastic thermoplastic to stiffen the toe and the heel. One way that this boot is like a stereotypical Pacific Northwest boot is that while that lasting board is pour and foam, the rest of the boot has more leather than the average boot. Even the average like Red Wing Heritage boot. This has a leather heel counter, leather toe stiffener, leather lining, and a leather shank as well. Many guys find all this leather internal construction superior for long-term durability or comfort or breathability. Everyone's got their own reasoning, but it is especially rare to get a leather shank, which a lot of guys find gives a much better balance of stiffness and flexibility than the more common steel shank or fiberglass. A shank is a stiff piece of material here between the heel and the midfoot that helps to stabilize the boot. A lot of people find it helps to limit foot pain, especially the older you get. The downside to this boot, sizing. The sizing is weird and stupid, but that doesn't mean that I am dismissing this boot. I think if I'd gotten a 12.5 with the insole, would have been fine. Even though the fit issue, I don't think it was to do with my ankles or instep, yeah, at least go up a half size. If you're okay with the possibility that you'll wind up standing on the lasting board instead of the removable insole, they are good. Like they are pretty good. Some good news is that unlike most Pacific Northwest brands, these boots are not made to order. They're ready to wear. They're sitting in Oregon waiting to be shipped to you. So if ultimately you just can't get your size to work for you, it's a lot easier to do a size exchange with these Drews boots than with most Pacific Northwest brands, which usually require you to wait months and months for your boots to be made for you. And then they're still double the price of this one. So like, comparing to sort of similar boots on the market, you could get American-made Red Wings for the same price as these, but they're not hole cut and they have more synthetics. And this is a smaller brand, which is always like kind of nice to patronize. You could get the Pacific Northwest-made Chelseas from Nick's Boots or White's Boots, but again, they'll cost at least twice the price and they'll take many, many months to be made for you. And also those boots, like most Pacific Northwest boots, are made with stitch down construction and a lot of leather, especially Nick's Boots. It looks weird for a Chelsea boot. I think White's is pretty good. And also White's has a wedge sole version, and it's worth noting that they are going to eventually release this in a wedge sole, if that's like what makes it for you. It's also worth noting when talking about Pacific Northwest boots, they are normally made with stitch down construction like Nick's and White's, and you really should keep in mind that while stitch down is cool, the average person won't find it any tougher than a normal Goodyear welted boot, which is what this is. And it's also harder to find a cobbler who will resole a stitch down boot, whereas any neighborhood cobbler can resole a Goodyear welt. Not that you're resoling your boot all that often, but still, there's a convenience aspect to getting a Goodyear welted boot that's worth remembering. So anyway, it's a Pacific Northwest boot that is not a Pacific Northwest boot and is more designed for what a normal guy will think is cool and comfortable. And it's under 300 bucks and it's resolable, and it's got a lot of leather on the inside as well, a lot more than other boots at this price, even a lot of ones that are made overseas. So I think it's pretty solid. I mean, whole cut, resolable, shrunken Bison, under 300 bucks. It's pretty cool what I think Drews achieved here. The link to buy these is in the description below if you want to check them out. Anyway, that's my review. You should subscribe to this channel if you are interested in stuff on boots and casual menswear. And also I've got a list of all my favorite Chelseas on screen now. I'll put it here right now, which means I have to end this video now before the end screen ends. Goodbye. I'll see you for the next video. Thanks.